Thutmose, this word here becomes Moses.
This burning bush was not consumed by fire, but was actually a light bulb that he was looking at. If his name meant one who was taken or drawn from the waters, then what was his name at birth? Even though we've covered Tehuti in a video, still getting questions about who Tehuti is. So what I'm going to do is actually build up and give you all the information from the degree of Christism by Partner Babyanun, the master teacher, Dr. Malachi Z.K. York. All right, so there's a question here. Where or who did Thutmose, Moses, really receive the 613 commandments from?
Where did Thutmose? Yeah, so Thutmose, and this word here becomes Moses. Where did he receive the 613 commandments? So the master says, answer, Thutmose, Moses, received 613 commandments, because in the Bible, they only tell you about how many? 10 commandments, yeah, when there are actually 613. Right, so the answer is that he received the 613 commandments from the Tamarine deity known as Thoth, who was the deity of writing and invention. Yes, Thoth wrote the laws with his own hands. Thutmose was given a book of Tamarine mysteries, now called the Torah. Yeah, the Torah. And many people refer to this as the 5 books of Moses. Yeah, 5 books of Moses, which are, of course, Genesis, Exodus, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and Numbers, which became the Torah or Bible, which gave birth to the Quran, all from this deity known as Tehuti. Okay? Tehuti or Thoth, where they get the word thought from. Like I said before, thought. To think, thought. That's where they get that word from, yeah? He was the deity that kept the records of Tamaré in Egypt. So when we say Tamaré, we're saying Egypt. Ta-ma-re, yeah, which can become a 3-part word. Tamaré, Egypt, yeah? Think of the word Egypt when we say Tamaré. He wrote with a quill, a quill. When you see his the depiction, he's using something called a quill. Right, so he wrote with a quill. The Mohammedans took this and named the 68th chapter of the Quran, the quill or pen, called Suratul Khalam. Right, so when you look at that surah, Suratul Khalam, which is part of the Quran supposedly revealed to Muhammad by Gabriel, who also came down to show Muhammad scriptures already written in heaven. And we'll show you the picture of, where they get that from. Now, the quill was symbolic of the ibis bird. The ibis bird, that's I-B-I-S, the ibis bird, that's what the quill is symbolic of, which also relates to the Egyptian story of the goose that laid the golden egg. So, the ibis bird is similar to the goose, which represents Geb. So when we say Geb, again, this is relating, because when we say Geb in ancient Egypt, you can see how you get Gabriel. Yeah? Because Gabriel or Jibril in Arabic is who came with the information to Muhammad. The quill, pen or finger recording on the tablets that made up the positive and negative confessions. So in ancient Egypt, you got something called the negative confessions, which later became Els Torah, or the Hebraic doctrine, Mosism, first degree, which gave birth to the Christians' doctrine, Christism, second degree, which yielded, this is the degree we're talking about, right? The degree of Christism, that's the second degree, which then
gave birth to the doctrine of Mohammedanism, the third degree. The positive and negative confessions were the declaration of innocence before the notarial of the tribunal and an unmistakably a replica of the Ten Commandments that Yahweh or Yahuwah, Jehovah, who was the Natir Tehuti. So this Tehuti that we're talking about is where they get these writings from, all right? In fact, there were 613 commandments originally. And there's a diagram here, which we'll show you again, which is putting the Declaration of Innocence and then comparing it with the 10 commandments, and it shows you, you know, where they get it from. Right, so let's keep going. So you can see that it's plagiarism. The Old Testament is plagiarism from these Egyptian writing. The ancient scriptures of Tamaray, Egypt. So again, Geb giving birth to the monotheistic archangel, that you say Gabriel, right? And you know, you can spell it in different ways. Gabriel as well, right? Or as I said, in Arabic, it becomes Jabril or Gabriel or Jibril, which is the monotheistic name. So you literally have these three books, which is the Torah, the Injil, and the Quran, which together will be a plural as a trinity or a neteru, Eloheem. You can find that in Genesis 1:1. So the actual deities of monotheism, their scriptures, else Torah, the else Injil, the Apocrypha, and else Quran, the reading, which all attribute the original writings to Thutmose, Moses, who, as you see below, also had a triad of names and an experience that he had in the Har mountain. So again, coincidentally, the mountain called Har is where he went to get the writings, where a deity inscribes scriptures on tablets with his personal finger, the laws and commandments, which is all borrowed from Tamarian Egyptian mysteries as Tehuti. And it shows you the hand of how, you know, what the Jews use today, they call it a yod, because they're not allowed to touch the scriptures. So they use that same hand of yod from Tehuti. Ha, H-A-R, in the Aramic Hebrew means above or mountain. Remember, Moses also went to the top of the mountain to meet the Neteru, and there he encountered what he considered an Eloheem sitting before a burning bush. You can find this in the Torah, Exodus chapter 3. This burning bush was not consumed by fire, but was actually a light bulb that he was looking at. So Moses met the Natir Tehuti on the mountain in the circle with his students. It was then picked up by the Greeks and he became known as Hermes. By the Greeks as Hermes, and by the Hebrews as Israelites and Jews, or Moshe. All right, so Moses became Moshe. Moshe, obviously the same name, Moshe, Moses, Musa, which means hidden secret, and it becomes Tehuti. So when you add Tehuti and Mus together, that's how you get Tehutimus, all right, which is Thutmose or Thutmose. And again, we'll show you the picture of the deities with the light bulb in ancient Egypt on the walls. The word Mos or Mose, so this word Mos or Mose simply means child. And Tehuti means master of divine words and sacred writings. So Moshe in Hebrew, Moses in Greek, and Musa. Again, you can spell these words in different ways. And Musa in Arabic. Strangely enough, it becomes a triad. Moses is not even proven to have existed. They tell you that Moses' name means to draw out of the water. But this incident did not take place until after he was weaned from his mother, which was at the age of 2 years. According to the Hebraic teachings, Genesis 17, verse 11 to 12, so If his name meant one who was taken or drawn from the waters, then what was his name at birth? Jews have a naming ceremony at the age of 8 days. His Hebrew name was Tobe Adonijah. Tobe, Tobe. This is all building up to explaining just who exactly this being is. So the name Moses is extracted from Ramesses II, the Egyptian name. His name Ra, which deals with the sun or solar. So Ra and Messes, Ramesses. This is Ramesses, yeah? Ramesses, where you get Ra Moses, meant a child of Ra. So Ra Messes or Ra Moses, Ramesses is a child of Ra. There isn't even any proof in ancient Tamaray, Egypt, of a Moses even being there. So it is plain to see that in all the mystery schools and sacred societies and religions of the planet, they find their roots in Tamaray or in Egypt. The goose or swan figures in all cosmogonies and world religions. It was even selected by the Christian Crusaders as the vehicle of the Holy Ghost by the leader of the army on its way to Palestine to recover the tomb of the Savior from the so-called infidels. Again, there is the swan of Jupiter in Greece and of Brahma in India, because the root of all manifestation is the cosmic egg. In the foregoing, we refer to the dual element air and water, physical aspects of Shu. Remember I was mentioning about these are all Egyptians when you say Shu and Tefnut. Yeah, these are all Egyptian deities that you can look and research. Their correspondence in man being the mental activities which we term the perceptive or receptive minds. The results of perceptive and receptive mind activity, as stated, are conclusions or concepts leaving no room for faith or belief, and so they are symbolized by the goose or swan, a bird of two elements, air and water. Two realities. In chapter 104 of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, Geb, the natir of time and of earth, is said to have laid an egg, or the universe. And Nu says, I watch and guard that mighty thing which hath come into being, and with which the natir Geb has opened the earth. The egg is a universal symbol. It represents the origin and mystery of being, the progressive development of the germinal life within the shell, the inward working, self-sustained, with nothing added except heat. Yet an active something is engendered when the inward evolution is complete. Another mystery appears. Thutmose, Moses, became a student of Thoth or Tehuti, school of Tamaray, Egypt, until the age of 40, or the 40th degree. Thutmose, Moses, supposedly went up into the mountain, and in this mountain he encountered what he considered a Natiru, Eloheem, or angelic being, sitting before a burning bush. And when he described the burning bush, he described it as a bush not consumed by fire. What Thutmose, Moses, didn't know is that he was looking at a light bulb. When you are looking at a light bulb, you are looking at a fire. If you don't know what a light bulb is, and you see the filament inside of it illuminated, the thread inside it heats up to incandescent. That is when it gets so hot that it glows with light. To date, they have found hieroglyphs on the walls of Tamaray, Egypt, showing pharaohs actually holding a light bulb, proving that it existed. So Moses, who became Thutmose, went up into the mountains of, again, remember this, what I was saying before? He went into the mountain. Where did I put Har, right? Let's come here. So Sinai, that's when you research the oldest Bible, you get Sinaiticus. Yeah, but let's just keep that there for now, because that ties into the Billy Carson debate. Okay, so he went onto the mountains of Sinai, and there he encountered the Natiru Tehuti. Now, like I said, if you Google Sinai today, you see the Sinai Peninsula, and it's really
in Egypt where this all took place. But in the biblical sense, the way they make it out, it's all mystical. Like he went into the mountain and he saw God in a burning bush, and then he, came down with these tablets that were given to him by God. But they don't tell you who that God is, who is actually Tehuti. He encountered the Neteru Tehuti, Thoth, who the Israelites referred to as the Neteru or Eloheem, or the Muslims refer to as the Allahumma, writing the book of the coming forth by day and translating it into Hieratics, which is the script of ancient Tamaray or Egypt, as opposed to the Hieroglyphics, which is the pictorial script. Thutmose, Moses, asked these men for a portion of that book to guide his lost people. The Neteru told him that the people would have to be Tamarayans or Egyptians. And of course, Thutmose told them that they are Tamarayans, Egyptians, by way of Mitzrayim, son of Ham, Genesis 10:6, son of Utnapishtim, Noah, Genesis 5:32. They were born in Tamaray, Egypt. They came out of the land of Canaan and dwelled in Tamaray, Egypt for over 400 years, and they spoke Hieratics, the Tamarayan Egyptian language. All right, so when you look at that, you look at the Hieratics, we've got here, we're going to show you this as well, and you look at the hieroglyphics. So let's keep going. So the deity responsible for recording the doctrine was Thoth, but his real name is Tehuti, Zehuti, Djehuti. The name Thoth was given to him by the Greeks. They linked him with their own deity Hermes, and like Hermes, he was considered to be the deity of wisdom, writing, and invention. He was also the messenger and spokesman of the deities, and finally a lunar deity. Thoth is represented as a man with the head of an ibis, which is often crowned by the crescent moon. Thoth invented the arts and sciences, music and magic, and was the deity of learning. But above all, he was famed for being the creator of hieroglyphics, and he was known as the Lord of Holy Words. All right, and here's another depiction of him, the statue of Tehuti, the master scribe at Tamaray, Egypt of the West. Hieroglyphs themselves were known as the words of the deities. Amongst the Tamarayans, Egyptians, magicians, Tehuti was called the Elder, and his followers claimed access to his library of magical books. Here they spent their time deciphering the pages and learning the secret formula that held the power to control all the forces of nature, and even how to command the obedience of the deities themselves. This was the magical knowledge of Thoth, from which his disciples named him Thoth, 3 times very greatest, which the Greeks translated as Hermes Trismegistus. Moses became an adept of this mystery school in the lower chamber of the pyramid, meaning pyra, burning, and mid in the center, called Sheol, the inner tombs of graves, the underworld, deep within the pyramid structures, where the mysteries were conveyed. So he also became known as Thutmose, after the school of Thoth, the same way a person in modern times, today, who follows Christ becomes a Christian by name. Because of Thoth, Moses is known to have written a scripture with his own hand, Deuteronomy 31 verse 9. Tehuti was the master of time. It was he who first divided the year into months of equal length, consisting of 30 days each, and added a further 5 intercalary days to make 365, according to one myth. The female deity Nut gave birth to the sun, the stars, and the planets. That is, she named them. This is what we're saying, like, sometimes things are symbolic. So when it's saying that Nut gave birth to the sun, the stars, and the planets, that is that she named them. She gave them birth by naming them. This so angered her father that he forbade her to have any further children in any month of the year. She went to Tehuti
And in a game of chance, she won from him 5 days, which belonged to no month. On these 5 extra days, she gave birth to the 4 deities Osiris, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys. Now, this Osiris, Isis, and Seth is where your religious stories are borrowed from, or stolen from, or plagiarized from. The female counterpart of Thoth was the Neter Seshat. The counterpart is Seshat. All right, so that's the female counterpart to Thoth. She aided and assisted him in many ways. It was she who recorded the time allotted to him by the deities for his stay on earth. Now, why is Tehuti depicted with a long beak? This is what I was saying about the quill. Tehuti is always portrayed with a long beak or the head of an ibis. The long beak is supposed to be a symbol of the quill or pen, the pen that writes, because he was the master scribe. The Jews got the hand, the yod, as a pointer from Tehuti when Thutmose, Moses, and the Tamarine Egyptian Israelites left Tamaray or Egypt. They passed through an area called Sin, right? So you see where you get this word again, Sin, or where you get that Sinai, Sinaiticus. The Yod as a pointer from Tehuti when Thutmose, Moses, a Tamarine deity, left Tamaray, Egypt. They passed through an area called Sin in the Sinai Peninsula, right? You can Google this and see it right there in Egypt, on down to a place called Sirabid al-Khadim, where the temple of Hagar, who is also known as Hathor. Hagar is also known as Hathor. And who is Hagar? Hagar was married to Abraham, right? And she and Abraham had a son called Ishmael, all right? And this Ishmael, became where you get, these Arabs from. All right, let me carry on. Hagar, who is also known as Hathor, okay? It's also called the Temple of Dendera, right? So when you look at the Dendera, you see that's where you get what people call astrology from, the map. You see that, the map of Dendera in that temple. It was a duplicate of the Temple of Dendera, which was the root of the astrological charting. So in Tamaray, right? The ceiling was decorated in the Tamarine astrological chart. This is what I'm talking about. The Temple of Dendera, whose ancient name is Tentira. Tentira. From the word Tamara. This is a very popular name that you hear a lot of people name their daughters Tamara. And that Tamara is the same as Ta-ma-re. Yeah. And that's because of those words, Ta relating to the earth, Ma relating to water, and Re relating to the sun, because these 3 elements are responsible for life. And it literally translates as land of Ra, which is located in the Dendera, which is north of Karnak. So again, when people go to Egypt, if you look at the map and look at where the Sinai Peninsula is, when you go down to the south, you're gonna see it's the city where everybody goes to for tourism. Sharm el Sheikh, thank you, Sharm el Sheikh. That's what it's called. So, but if you look at the different parts of Egypt, you got Karnak, you got Aswan, you obviously Cairo, where everybody goes to as the city, but then you got like Aswan, where you got a lot of dark original beings in Egypt, because as I said, when you go back to Ishmael and how the Arabs came about by way of the mixture of Hagar and Abraham, you see that you have different shades now of people in that area known as Egypt today who are trying to claim as it being their original home when they're really not the original Tamaranes. Okay, so let's keep going. In Karnak, also north of Luxor, again, that's another part, Luxor in Nubia, the Temple of Arabia, called the Kaaba today, was also a temple to the Tamarine Egyptian deity Aset. Aset is where you get the word Isis again from, or Isis
Aset. So you have Aset, Isis. Because remember I mentioned about, Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. All right. All right, let's keep going. So Aset or Isis, or again in the Quran you find the word Uzza, okay, known in Quran 23:19. Quran 23:19. As a female deity worshipped by the Arabian tribe of the Ghaffan. And we're going to show you these quotes and images. A Kaaba was a temple originally of this Tamarine Egyptian deity, just as a temple of Hathor was erected in the Sinai Peninsula by the Philistine Hyksos dynasty, or Gira, where the family of Abimelech resided. There they built a temple to Hathor in the local called Serabid el-Khadim. This is where Thutmose, Moses, received the 613 commandments of law. While Thutmose, Moses, was in the temple of Hagar or Hathor, receiving the tablets being carved by the Itba fingers of the Neteru Eloheem in Exodus 31:18, a group of deities that the Tamarine, the Egyptians, referred to as the Neteru, where you get the word nature from. The children of Israel built a golden massachor, meaning molten agile, right? Meaning calf. This is where the whole story of Moses and the calf and everything comes from, right? Symbolic of the Tamarine Egyptian deity Hathor, because she obviously has that bull as a Hathor, who is also called Aether. Yeah, so Hathor is also known as Aether. So she's also known as Aether. And the Greeks identify her with their own female deity, Aphrodite. Hathor is referred to as the celestial cow. This ties into how Indians worship the cow as well, who gave birth to the universe and all that it contains, and is represented in the form of a cow. You can read that in El's Holy Quran, which dedicates the whole chapter 87 to this deity called Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter of the heifer or heifer cow. It is the longest chapter in the whole of El's Holy Quran, and within it they discuss the story of Thutmose, Moses, and the children of Israel, and the golden calf in verse 51. The world has been deceived into thinking that Thutmose, Moses, was up in the mountains of Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights in Exodus 24:18, which is also called Jabal el-Nur, meaning mountain of light. Let me read that again, because this is where the confusion of the world being deceived. It says the world has been deceived into thinking that Thutmose, Moses, was up in the mountains Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights in Exodus 24:18, which is also called Jabal el-Nur, which means mountain of the light. The Muslim world named a mountain after Thutmose, Moses, called Jebel Musa. Remember I was saying like here where we're talking about Musa, so you got Jebel Musa, but they spell it like that. So they named that mountain after him, meaning the Mount of Moses, to imply that this is where he received his revelation. And you can look at that in Quran 44 verse 51 to 52. And there's a map as well of Mount Sinai. What is the meaning of the word law? I think I'm going to just touch a little bit on this and then kind of summarize. What is the meaning of the word law? According to the American Heritage Dictionary, the word law is defined as a rule of conduct or procedure established by custom, agreement, or authority. Another meaning, 2a, the body of rules and principles governing the affairs of a community and enforced by a political authority. The Ashuric Syriac Arabic word for law is Sharia, where you get the Sharia laws from, right? Which means a rule established by authority, society, or custom. 2, a code of ethics or behavior. This word takes its root from shara'a, meaning to introduce, enact, prescribe, give,
make laws. The Aramic Hebrew word for law is Torah, where you get the word Torah from. These letters are equivalent to the Ashuric Syriac Arabic word waria, which means a view. In Greek, the word for law is nomos, right? So what is the difference between laws and commandments? As mentioned previously, the word for laws is in Ashuric Syriac Arabic is sharia. The word for commandment is wasiya and means direction, instruction, injunction, order. Many times throughout the scriptures, you will see a distinction being made between a law and a commandment. Take a look at Exodus 24:12, and it gives you the transliteration from the Hebrew, from the King James mistranslated version of King James, 1611 AD, and the correct translation by Parnabab Yanun or Natir Ferti Atumre, and it says, and Yahuwah said to Moses, come up to me into Har, the mountain, and be there, and I will give you Loach tablets of Eben stone, and a Torah law and mitzvah commandment, which I have Chauthab inscribed, that you may your Ro teach them. So basically, we're saying, and when you go into it more and more, you'll find out that you can see that the Natir Shel Natiru made a distinction between law and commandments and stone tablet. And the commandment is what is asked of you. For instance, the first commandment that was given to man, or Adam, was not to partake of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You find that in Genesis 2:17. That quote reads, however, of that special tree of hallucination that is in the center, you are not to eat from it, for in the very same day you eat from it, you will be destined to die. So that was the first commandment given to man. This was asked of him because man violated this commandment. He was punished for this action and was expelled from the delight, and his gift of everlasting life was revoked. As time went on, man was given a second chance by the Natir Shul Natiru to amend for his sins, and he obeyed. Then he would inherit this right to come back to the enclosed garden of delight. I'm gonna yield there, but the main point of going through that, in summary, was that this deception of the being that people are calling Moses, because when you're reading the Bible, you're told that Moses received the 5 books, or what people call the Torah, which becomes the Bible. And we know that the monotheistic religions all get their roots from ancient Egypt. And they make it sound mystical that Moses went into a mountain and met God and then came down with these commandments, where we know that he actually went and was a student of Tehuti, the great scribe who was teaching his students. And he asked if he could get some of the teachings so that he can come and help, raise his people. And when he encountered Tehuti teaching, they were using a light bulb, right? This is a science, how you can make light with a bulb and have incandescent lights. And so he, just being primitive, related to that as a burning bush. And he got given some of these writings, and because he was a student of Tehuti, he became known as Thutmose, or the student of Tehuti. And Tehuti is the writer of all the knowledge on the planet, pretty much 95% of it. The sciences, music, magic, name it, what they refer to in Greece as the 7 liberal sciences, you see. So we just demystify everything in Wu-Sabat by letting you know that these were beings that were studying under our deities or great teachers, and they were given a piece of information that they came back to other, like go back to Europe and then taught their people. And this started with Moses, or the character that becomes Moses in the Bible, but they don't tell you that they can't find any evidence of Moses, not in Egypt,
not anywhere. Just like the other characters who, like we mentioned, Gabriel, for example, is again, it's a three-part word, and most of the words like Tamare, Geb, Ra, El, right? Geb, Ra, you always see the three-part, which relates to how they take the Egyptian words like Geb, which relates to, you know, the planet, and then Ra relating to the sun, and then they become Els or Eloheem. You see, this is why they say that Moses was made a god in Exodus 7:1. He was made an Elohim. And the Ra, or the ancient Egyptian deities, are the ones that really gave. This is why even in Revelation 3:14 it tells you that Atum witnessed the creation of God, because these gods are these Elohims, which then become your biblical characters. But the master teacher partner Babyanun always gives us, clarity in terms of the knowledge of what he's teaching. And so, yeah, don't believe the hype. Don't think that these religious books are authentic, because they're not. They were literally given a piece of information, just like the Greeks going into Egypt, learning certain sciences. They were raised and given certain information, as I mentioned before, like Pythagoras, Socrates, Aristotle, name them all. They went to Egypt and studied, and then took those stories and the information and brought it into, Rome and Greece, and acted like they originated it. They're not the originators. They're the imitators. So Wu-Sabat gives you the actual facts. Do your research, check things out, study, and so that you can basically break the spell of religion, and know the truth, so that you can actually start to act and live Wu-Sabat. So until the next video, we're going to say thank you and wadu.